you very much for that introduction, Matt, and a big thank you to GTH for having me as well. What an awesome venue. So I think the big difference between Figured and other farm accounting programs is this concept of collaboration. So what we want to be able to do, and what we are doing, is being able to bring all of the relevant information together so that you can share that with your banker, with your accountant, with a third-party equity investor. It might be an off-farm sibling or something like that. I've got a little video to essentially, I suppose, whet your appetite and kick off. Today I'm going to talk more conceptually about Figured. If you are interested in seeing the program itself, come and have a chat with me. I can take you through it and answer any questions you might have.
The business of farming just got smarter, with Xero working hand in hand with Figured on Farm for accurate livestock reporting, budgeting and accounting in the cloud. Accountants and farmers used to spend hundreds of hours gathering basic information about livestock numbers and cash transactions and still end up with completely different results. Now, accountants, farmers and banks are able to work together from the same set of data online so they can understand the farm's financial, stock and equity position in real time at any time. The farmers and their advisors can work on the stock reconciliation, ensuring the numbers are always accurate so you can make informed business decisions. Any purchases or sales update your stock quantities in Figured, and the invoice gets sent through to Xero and matched to the payment when it occurs in the bank account. Bank transactions and rural supplier accounts flow into Xero automatically, making it easy to keep the financials accurate and up to date. So it only takes a few clicks to compare actuals from Xero with the budgets and forecasts in Figured. As the year progresses and things change, you can reforecast accordingly, so you always have a clear view of the cash impact on everything you plan to do. With the forecast profit report, track progress towards the targeted profit as the year progresses, instead of receiving projections months after the information is already out of date. With Xero and Figured, farmers and their advisors can focus on adding value and profitability to the farm rather than worrying about the accounts.
Excellent. All right, so we had a little bit of an introduction to Figured there. Sorry about the technical difficulties. So basically what we're looking at is Xero is our core accounting platform. That doesn't change. Figured is our add-on to Xero. So it contains all of that financial information that we're pulling through from Xero. So our integration works by way of essentially pulling those actuals through. So when we set up a farm in Xero, what we're looking to do is we set up an exact replica of the the categories that you'll see in Xero. So what that means is that we can then pull that information through those actuals as they come through. Now, if you were paying particular attention in that video, you may have noticed that there's actually two different perspectives you can look at Figured from. So you can look at it from a budgeted perspective. So you may have a requirement to provide your bank with a budget, you may need to provide a budget to your accountant for some tax planning, or you might actually just like to have a budget so that you can see how you've tracked against your budget throughout the year. So whatever way we look at that, there's a need for a static budget. So we do have one of those in Figured. Now, we all know that your budget's only ever as good as the day, the week, the month that you've created it, because commodity prices and seasonal conditions are changing all the time. So what we do is we also have a rolling budget, or what we call the forecast. So if you imagine, so say for example we've got a winter cropping operation, we're going to run our budgeting period from March to February each year, because that makes sense to me in terms of when I'm sowing and when I'm harvesting and when I receive my income. Now that can be different to what you've got set up in Xero, that's not a problem. So what we'd do is we'd have our budget in there, we'd lock our budget down, we'd then copy that budget through to our rolling forecast. So as our months go by, so March, April, May has gone by, those actuals that have occurred in Xero have actually come through and replaced those forecast months. So when we sit down to reforecast and to say, right, I've had an extra wet season this year and I'm going to have to downgrade my crop forecasts, then I can actually sit down and I know exactly where I'm at today to be able to look forward and reforecast my position. We've then got a whole lot of reporting that also will be able to compare your actuals to your budget or your actuals to your forecast as well, just at the click of a button, which is really, really powerful stuff. Alrighty, so there's always going to be lots of information that you guys need to keep, and it seems like this, this concept of keeping more and more information is growing by the day. So what we do is we're aiming to keep your financial management information within Figured and Xero, but certainly there are other things that you guys might need to keep track of, such as spray records, like your animal health, and that's where we're essentially building out a bit of a network of integrations of our own. So we have an integration with a company called AgWorld. You might be familiar with, a lot of agronomists use it. So it's a program that they typically use to provide spray and fertiliser application recommendations. If you've got a farmer subscription, you could log in, you could actually record those applications that you've made. And what we have with AgWorld is essentially an ability to integrate and pull through the budget assumptions for all of your crop expectations. Our AgriWeb integration is currently in the final stages of testing, and essentially what that looks like is we'll be able to pull through your sales, purchases, and ageing or natural increase transactions as well. AgriWeb is more livestock based, so it's really more about your inventory management. It's about your animal health and that kind of stuff. So to take that concept of the ecosystem further, we're seeing some amazing technological advancements in terms of gathering data, especially in the ag space. I think there's an absolute plethora of data out there, and often it can be very, very expensive to actually get hold of. So AgriWeb and AgWorld are, two companies who are starting to make the most of that data to be able to help you to make, better farm decisions. We're pulling through the financial information that's coming through out of those programs to then be able to share potentially with your, obviously with your accountant, but potentially with a banker. You might have an off-farm sibling that you need to keep in the loop as well. And where we want to head in Australia, and we've been able to achieve this largely in New Zealand, is around this concept of ag feeds. So we want to create a network where you enter the data once, and essentially it flows through to all of the parties who need to access that data so that they can help you make better decisions. So in New Zealand, what we've been able to do with the ag feeds is we've partnered with a whole lot of dairy companies, including Fonterra, obviously the largest one over there. So when your dairy farmer logs into Figured, they can see that $80,000 worth of milk income actually relates to 25,000 kilograms of milk solids, and it will have the butterfat percentage and so on in there already for them. So that's all automated. So certainly some massive opportunities in Australia to do that kind of thing with large grain companies, and certainly if we were able to do that with livestock, and that would probably revolutionise the industry. I know that's quite a controversial topic. So as Matt mentioned, there are certainly some very forward-looking banks who we do actually have some partnerships with. Those banks, so basically the partnerships vary from fully funded subscriptions to some subsidised subscriptions for 12 months. And really the motivations there are big part on the relationship piece. So because of the information that is in Figured, bankers can understand your business better. It also means that they can respond faster to your inquiries because they have all of the information that they need. And it also means that you're able to demonstrate to them that not only do you understand the business, but your own business, but you can present that in a format that they can use. Some of the smartest farmers that I've met could roll off numbers off the top of their head, and they knew exactly what was going on in their business, but it was actually getting it down on paper that was the challenge. So Figured provides that platform. So just to have a quick review of banking industry recent developments, there was a select committee on lending to primary production customers that was done last year. They released a report in early December. They had some quite interesting findings or recommendations in there around establishing a national farm debt mediation scheme, similar to what's in New South Wales, around notice period, so how long the banks need to give you if your loan's going to expire, or loan condition reviews, those things. It also interestingly commented on who should be preparing and altering documentation such as budgets for the purposes of loan applications. What we are going to see in the next little while, whether that's in a couple of months or a couple of years, is that local bank managers are going to have to step back from their involvement in that process. There is going to be a more of an arm's length approach. And so a lot of the banks are essentially looking to Figured to be able to upskill their farmers and provide a platform so that when those things start to come into play, because the regulator is asking them to do it, that they essentially have a platform to be able to deliver. So a discussion about cloud accounting wouldn't be complete without addressing the elephant in the room. I've actually got two elephants. Although I have to say, I think Hayley very accurately kind of nailed both of these, so I won't go over too many of her points. I mean, security of data in the cloud, I think this is something that people get sometimes a bit anxious about this. Certainly, we and Xero both use the same kinds of measures to ensure the security of your data that the major banks use. So certainly, if you're comfortable with internet banking, then for all intents and purposes, you should be comfortable with using Figured and Xero. And internet connectivity. Who's got crappy internet? Just a little show of hands. I did until really recently. Do you know what your download speed is? Yeah, putting you on the spot there. So I'm actually in a very, very populated area, and I was getting less than 1.5 megabytes per second download speeds, which was very frustrating. I couldn't stream anything. That was absolutely out of the question. But I didn't have any problems with Figured and Xero. So essentially, if you're, like I can speak from experience, if you've got anything less than 1.5 megabytes per second download speeds, you're fine. So basically, Figured and Xero are both designed to not be overly pretty, so that if you do have some issues with bandwidth, you can still use them. Just a quick recent Figured success story. So we had a situation recently, this was actually one of the bank-funded subscriptions. The farmer needed some additional working capital. They were running into a bit of a cash flow shortage leading up to harvest. The banker had access to the Figured file, so they could actually go in, log in, obtain the information that they needed, and they were able to draw down those funds and get access to them within 3 hours, and normally that process would take 1 to 3 days. And essentially everyone was pretty happy with that outcome. So that's just, one example of a way that, that Figured has been able to bring together the right people to be able to service the farmer better. And that's all I had for you today. If you do want to have a little look at the program, please come over and see me. I'd love to take you through it and answer any questions that you might have.